Welcome back, y'all. How everyone's doing? I am Justin with Vibrant Works. All right. What's good, fellow explorers of the vibrant mind? Welcome to another episode where we bridge the gap between science and spirituality. Today, we're diving into a fascinating paradox: how practices meant to quiet the ego can sometimes inadvertently inflate it. We'll explore this from both a scientific and spiritual perspectives. And most importantly, we'll discuss practical ways to pursue authentic growth. Now let's embark on this journey together. Thank y'all for being here. And today's topic is very important. It's because we're looking at the symptoms and causes of the superiority complex and the inferiority complex. And today we'll touch on both so you can make sure that's not what's happening within your ego, because sometimes the ego is very tricky and it can prompt you or trick you into believing that you're doing something that's giving you peace of mind in your life, or it could be potentially overtaking your life, and you think this thing becomes your identity that you're doing, that you're practicing, so that you can feel and be either better than someone, or you don't feel as empowered as others. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is the dual nature of spiritual practices. Spiritual practices like yoga and meditation have been a part of our human culture for a long time, y'all. These practices, they promise inner peace, self-awareness, and personal growth. But recent scientific studies have uncovered an interesting phenomenon that ancient spiritual teachers have long cautioned us against: spiritual narcissism. So, spiritual narcissism is a fascinating concept that bridges scientific and spiritual understanding, y'all. From a physiological perspective, it's defined as the use of spiritual practices and beliefs to bolster one's ego. As I said in the beginning, this is about making sure we're aware or keeping the ego in check to make sure it's not running the show. The ego is very intelligently made, y'all. So we just want to be aware of its tricks of the trade, so that you can make sure that how you're operating in your life is with intent, out of a spiritual, heartfelt place, and not just simply out of a place of ego. Okay? So, from a physiological perspective, it's defined as the use of spiritual practices and beliefs to bolster one's ego or self-image. If your entire life is lived in such a way that the entire purpose of your life, for you to even feel like you can fit into this world, or that you're here for a reason, if the whole idea of your life is to bolster up your self-image, I will have to then question, are you actually in tune with the idea that you are already perfect within your own reality, and you're already in the perfect place, you already have the perfect time, you already have everything you need right here, right now? So in order for you to amplify something, or feel the need to have to amplify something, you may be feeling like you don't have enough yet. You don't have what you need. You're not where you want to be. You're not who you want to be yet. And that's the trick of the ego, y'all. And that's why we're talking about this today. You have to be very aware. I'm not even going to say be careful. Just be aware. Just be informed. So come to conversations like this more and more often, so that you can get a better idea of how you're operating. Everything I talk about is so that you're informed on how you operate. because we've been doing things so long that we may not even be aware. It's just automatic. If it's just automatic, things just happen automatically in your life, y'all, and you don't know how to stop it. You don't know how to stop thumping, right? Like I wouldn't know how to stop thumping right now. How do I stop thumping? Oh, it takes a conscious effort first and foremost. It takes an awareness. Oh, I'm thumping. And then it takes a conscious effort to slow myself down and to be aware and be in the knowing that I have everything I need in this moment to stop thumping. All right. Dr. Gerald May, a psychiatrist and spiritual counselor, described this as the misuse of spiritual practices, energies, or experiences to bolster self-centered ways of being, y'all. So what we talking about today is, like I say, it's okay to be in tune with yourself and be about yourself, but there's also a trick to that where we can fall in this hidden trap where we're thinking being all about self is the all be all end goal, with no consideration of others, with no accountability on how our energy, we put it out there and how others may perceive it. We have to be very mindful, y'all, that once you get in tune with yourself, get in tune with your spiritual practices, the purpose is not to put down others or to compare yourself to others to feel inferior based on where you believe they are in their spiritual journey right now. You are exactly where you need to be. You have exactly the perfect amount of resources. You have exactly who you need in your life right now to take the next step in your journey in the right direction, y'all. Okay? In spiritual traditions, this concept has been recognized for a very, very long time. In Buddhism, it's often referred to as spiritual materialism, a term popularized by Kagyam Trungpa. He warned that spiritual practitioners might use their path to deceive ourselves into thinking we are developing spirituality when instead we are strengthening our egocentric through spiritual techniques. So let me break that down. That's just simply saying, y'all, you may be getting into spirituality with good intentions originally, but after so long, you start talking down on people that's not, that you don't perceive is where you are or have the knowledge you have. You want to use these techniques and practices in this knowledge to floss on people. Oh, y'all don't have what I have. Y'all don't know what I know. Y'all not in tune when I'm in tune with. Get your weight up. Get your education up. Get your spirituality up. So now you're using it as a weapon to make you bolster yourself to feel superior to others who are on different parts of their journey. You're using it like a person can own a weapon and use it to only defend their family, for instance, whereas someone can have a weapon and use it to attack others because they don't feel strong enough to use their voice to command things to change, to command people to move. So they need something else that they feel will give them enough power to cause a more forceful way to create change, y'all. Okay? So, the Bhagavad Gita is a fundamental text in Hinduism. Also, it cautions against pride in spiritual achievements, reminding spiritual practitioners that true spirituality involves transcending the ego, not inflating it. So when you're getting real big-headed about your spiritual path, and I'm saying this in a way of, if you're saying I'm proud of myself because of how far I've come in my spirituality versus, man, I'm way ahead of y'all. Y'all can't touch me. I'm way too powerful for y'all to even get on my level. This is levels to the game. You're not here yet. You won't even get here for ABCD how long. So now you're inflating your ego instead of using the spiritual information, the spiritual techniques to actually bolster and transcend and create more powerful energy for you to transcend the ego. Because if the ego is still driving your train, it don't matter if you're spiritual, religious, or not. It don't matter. If the ego driving your train, you're on the same train as everybody else that's letting their ego drive you. That ain't the purpose. The purpose is not to allow the ego to run your life in such a way that you feel a victim to your own ego. Okay? So, the Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Kagyam Trungpa, warned about spiritual materialism, where the ego co-opts. So your ego is co-opting. It's an op. Your spiritual practices for its own benefit. I told you the ego is tricky, y'all. You gotta be very aware of what's going on in your mind. Okay? Don't get attached to everything that's happening in your mind. Just be aware. You are the awareness of what's going on in your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're not your ego. You are the awareness, the spiritual awareness of what's happening in this physical vessel. That's what you are. But you believe you're your body. You believe you're your ego. So when thoughts come that are negative or positive or neutral, you don't know how to put them in their right category so that you as a vessel can function and flow through this life in a magical way, in a free-flowing way, in a godly way. Okay? So, now, modern psychology is catching up, providing us empirical evidence for this age-old wisdom, y'all. Okay? So, the science and spirituality of self-enhancement. Now, let's look at what both science and spiritual traditions have to say about this phenomenon of where the ego, while you're practicing your spiritual practices and you're building up this energy and you're getting this knowledge, but your ego the whole time is like, feed me more, feed me more, feed me more. You're making me more powerful. You're making me more stronger. And I'm the driver of this train, of this life. Not you, the awareness that you are, but me, the ego. Okay? So, let's see what science has to say. All right, so here's some fascinating research that provides empirical evidence for this spiritual wisdom. 2 key studies have shedded a little bit more light on the phenomenon of spiritual narcissism. So, first we have the work of Yahoo Gebauer and his colleagues. They conducted 2 experiments, one with yoga practitioners and another with meditators. In this yoga study, they followed 93 students for up to 15 weeks, measuring their levels of self-enhancement immediately after yoga classes and when they hadn't practiced for 24 hours. What they found was striking, y'all. Participants showed higher levels of self-enhancement, including higher self-esteem and a tendency to see themselves as better than the average practitioner right after their yoga sessions. So they gained that spiritual energy and awareness, but the ego got them because it made them feel superior to the ones who are just getting started or just learning or aren't as in tune with the practice. Okay? In their meditation study, they follow 162 practitioners for 4 weeks, y'all. Again, measuring self-enhancement after meditation sessions. They found very similar results. Meditation seemed to increase the sense of self-centering and self-enhancement in meditation relevant domains. More recently, Roosevelt and Anoop Visser conducted a series of studies on what they term as spiritual superiority. They developed a scale to measure this, including items like I am more in touch with my senses than most, and the world will be a better place if others too had the insights that I have now. The world would be a better place if people in the world thought like me. So when you get to that place, does that sound like you or ego? If only they thought like me. If only they knew what I knew. If only they were like me. Who's the like me in this scenario? That's the ego, y'all. That's why I'm telling you. Just because you're in your spiritual practices, you're in your self-loving phase, you're in your season of healing, that doesn't make you superior to the ones that haven't quite got there yet. Because you were them at one point. And because you were them, you would have loved to have seen a sense of a reflection back to you of non-judgment and unconditional love while you're on your journey. So that's what this is about. And I had a really good definition up, which was striking to me. Let me get it up again. All right. So when I read this, I was like, oh my goodness. I didn't quite see it in this perspective before. But a superiority complex is a defense mechanism that involves an exaggerated belief in one's own abilities or accomplishments, often to the detriment of others. People with a superiority complex may be boastful, vain, or unwilling to listen to others. They may also feel especially bad when they fail. They set really unrealistic expectations for themselves, and they alienate others, manipulating others in their life. Okay? So, Alfred Adler, an early psychologists, first identified superiority complexes in the early 1900s as a reaction to feelings of inferiority. That's the crazy part that got me. Superiority complex is a defense mechanism because it's reacting out of a place of inferiority. If I don't feel superior, I feel inferior. Wow. If I don't feel superior, I can't be in my harmonious, happy place because there's no in between. If I don't feel superior than you, I feel inferior than you. And I can't have that happening. Now let's step back. Does that sound like a spiritual in tune person talking that transcending the ego? Or does that sound like ego talking, the ego side of you? The ego construct. So, you feeling superior, thinking it's out of a place of superiority, but it's rooted in inferiority. That's the whole ironic part about operating in a space of superiority. At the root of it, the cause and effect of it is you actually feel inferior deep down. So, that's okay though. If you're operating in that space, much love to you. We have acknowledged it. We're aware. Once you're aware, it's no more excuses. Once you're aware, no more excuses. Only actions taken towards building up the life, the choices, the reflections that you desire to come out of you. Because all of this is your core energy. We're just teaching you how to use your energy and be aware of how you're using your energy in a responsible, accountable way. Okay? So, all right, they found that people engaged in spiritual training, particularly those in energetic training like aura reading, scored higher on spiritual superiority than those without such training. Interestingly enough, these scores were more strongly correlated with communal narcissism, a form of narcissism focused on being the most helpful or enlightened within the self-esteem. So, You're building up your self-esteem to the point where the purpose of your self-esteem, or to feel like you need that self-esteem, is to use it as a weapon. So that's what we're trying to make sure we're aware of, y'all, when we're going into these spiritual practices. We're start getting back into our healing and our self-love and that feminine energy, and then we're allowing that masculine energy to, get us through our hard times. We just have to stay aware that. Make sure you aren't practicing getting better as a person in order to feel superior to another. Because if you're doing that, your root is actually rooted in a belief that you are inferior if you don't do that. And that's just a belief. You can let that go right now as you're hearing this. You don't need to be superior to anyone. And that's what makes you superior to your old self. To your old self. No one else. You don't have to feel like you need to prove anything to anybody else but your old self. That 5-year-old you, that 10-year-old you, that 18-year-old you, that 25-year-old you, that 30-year-old you, so on and so forth. That's who you're up against. You're not up against everybody else in the world. You're up against you. This ain't about feeling superior or inferior to anybody else, y'all. Okay? Let's keep it pushing. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. All right. So, these studies suggest that after yoga or meditation, people often experience heightened self-enhancement. They may think, I'm more mindful than others, or I'm more spiritually advanced than others. From a spiritual perspective, this is precisely what many traditions caution against. The Bhagavad Gita, a key Hindu text, warns about the danger of spiritual pride, y'all. So that's the thing. It's warning you about spiritual pride, not pride in self. Two different things. When you're priding yourself in a practice because you feel like that practice is what makes you superior, or you're using that practice because you feel inferior, either way, that's where it's muddy waters, y'all. And we have to stay very mindful of our intent the entire time that we're entering these different spaces within our energy. Okay? So, similarly, many Buddhist teachers emphasize the importance of non-attachment to spiritual achievements. You done made it this far in your spiritual ladder. Don't get attached to it. Why? Because as soon as you feel attached to it, it becomes you. As far as an identifier, your identity becomes that achievement and not the being that achieved it. You aren't your achievements. You aren't your failures. You aren't your successes. You aren't your mistakes. You are the being that can experience those things. And if you get attached to the extent that these things become your identity, oh, I'm a millionaire. I'm a billionaire. I'm the baddest thing around. I'm this, I'm that. That's okay if you're operating in this space. No judgment on this end. I just caution people to be more aware of if you're in that space. Make sure it's fully about you and nobody else. That's the only thing. Don't make it about nobody else. If you the baddest thing walking, it's because you the baddest thing walking, not because I'm the baddest thing walking compared to them. I feel good about myself because compared to them, I have more. I have this. I used to hear this all the time. It could be worse because there's somebody out there that has it worse than me. No, 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 no. Let's break that up. Let's stop saying that. Let's stop using that energy like that. You are blessed because you are blessed. Don't compare. Okay? They're on their journey. So you don't have to make yourself feel better by comparing yourself to someone in a superior position or an inferior position that you may perceive. Okay? So, let's get into the paradox of well-being and ego inflation, y'all. Here's where it gets really interesting, if it hasn't already gotten interesting to you. Science suggests that these feelings of spiritual superiority might contribute to well-being. What? Huh? Let me say that again. Science suggests that these feelings of spiritual superiority might actually contribute to well-being. But spiritual traditions often teach that true well-being comes from transcending the ego, not inflating it. How do we reconcile these two opposing perspectives? Science is saying having spiritual superiority contributes to your well-being. Feeling good about your and being prideful behind your spiritual practices compared to others contributes to your well-being, versus traditional spiritual teachings saying, whoa, 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 caution against that. So we're going to discuss the relationships between self-enhancement, well-being, and spiritual practices, y'all. Okay? So, from a scientific perspective, let me back up. In other words, feeling spiritually superior seemed to make people happier and more satisfied with their lives. That's why I put emphasis on seemed. In other words, feeling spiritually superior seemed to make people happier and more satisfied with their lives. When you feel good about yourself compared to others, I can see where that contributes to you, what seems to be your well-being. Because you're doing better than others in your perspective. That's the whole point. So, from a scientific perspective, this aligns with other research on self-enhancement. Psychologists have long known that seeing ourselves in a positive light can boost our mental health and resilience. It's a bit like a psychological immune system protecting us from negative feelings and experiences. However, this presents a paradox from a spiritual perspective. That's why we're going to talk about the science, and we're going to talk about the spiritual perspective. And we're going to get you to have a sense of both, y'all. Most spiritual traditions teach that true well-being comes not from inflating the ego, but from transcending it, as I said before. The Buddha taught that attachment to the self is the root of suffering. Attaching to your achievements, attaching to your successes, not really understanding that you are the experiencer, the creator of those experiences. You feel me? So when you get attached to them too much or too strongly, what happens when, let's say, a bug attaches to your hand or to your skin right now, and then you rip it off? You just, oh no, it bit me. Rip. What happens when you do that? You're going to suffer. Because it was so deep in there. It was so attached to you. That when you finally rip it off, there could be some damage. But right after that damage, it's okay. You can start healing that with the right approaches, y'all. Because now you're aware. Okay? The Buddha taught that attachment to the self is the root of suffering, while many Christian mystics speak of the need to die to the self to find true peace. The science and the spiritual perspectives are too far apart. So how do we reconcile these viewpoints, man? Some researchers, like Dr. Jack Bauer at the University of Dayton, suggest that there might be different types of well-being. That's why I got this going, y'all. Vibrant Works. We exploring the vibrant mind. We're gonna know multiple perspectives, multiple truths. Just be aware and then use the information in the way that best benefits you. So, the kind associated with self-enhancement might be more hedonic, focused on pleasure and positive emotions. And in my chart, astrological chart, I think I seen that word hedonic, and that's, I love pleasure. Not gonna lie to you. I love positive emotions. Not gonna lie to you. So that's a big part of my chart that contributes to my well-being. Those things are very important to me. But in contrast, the well-being described in spiritual traditions might be more euphoric. We're gonna get this word right, y'all. Give me just a moment. This word got me. I need to know how to pronounce this though. Yeah, we're gonna get this word right. Hold on, y'all. I'm gonna spell it out. Maybe before I hit the pronounce, I'm gonna spell it out, and maybe somebody can pronounce it that's listening to this. Let me know if you can. But this one got me. All right, it is EUDAIMONIC. All right, now I'm finna hit this play.
Eudaimonic.
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 Eudaimonic. All right, let's get back in it, y'all. Eudaimonic. All right. In contrast, the well-being described in spiritual traditions might be more eudaimonic, focused on meaning, purpose, and growth. This suggests that while spiritual self-enhancement may make us feel good in the short term, it might not lead to the deeper, more lasting form of well-being that spiritual practices ultimately aim for. So when I present this information, y'all, it's okay to focus on your short-term well-being while striving for your long-term well-being. We don't have to pick between the two. We can use the science with the spirituality, y'all. At times, things be seeming conflicting, but they of the same coin. Yin and yang. The same paradox. We can be using this energy and this information how we see fit. It's not a one size fit all. If you need some short-term things to make you feel good, focus on it. Stop thinking about the long term. But if you've already been practicing them short terms and you're just getting to a place where it's just starting to feel a little redundant and you're not making deeper connections, then start aiming for the deeper spiritual practices. Okay? And that brings us into the different practices with different outcomes. Both scientific research and spiritual wisdom suggest that not all practices affect the ego in the same way. So we're going to explore this a little bit. The studies we've discussed also reveal interesting differences between various spiritual practices. Vonk and Visser found that people engaged in energetic training like aura reading or past life life. All right. Vonk and Visser found that people engaged in energetic training like aura reading or past life regression scored higher on spiritual superiority than those practicing mindfulness meditations. This aligns with observations from both scientific and spiritual perspectives. From a psychological standpoint, practices that claim to confer special abilities or insights might be more likely to inflate the ego. So those spiritual teachers we go to, or psychics, or whatever you believe in or get into, we don't have to stay on that too long. But whatever you believe in or don't believe in, the ones that practice those practices are more likely to have an inflated ego, because They feel like they're special or gifted in such a way that makes them superior. If you have a gift, y'all, a gift was given to you. Okay? We're all special. But we don't have to use that knowledge in a weaponized way to make us feel better than the next. I see it all the time. Get a little bit of money in your pocket, you start feeling like you better than the people you came from. You get a better car, you start feeling like you better than the people you came from. You are them. They contributed to where you are today. Whether you believe that or not, you would not be here without the experiences you had with all them folk. Okay? So mindfulness practices, on the other hand, often emphasize observing thoughts and feelings without judgment or attachment. This approach is less likely to feed into feelings of superiority, although, as we've seen, it's not immune to these effects at all. These findings parallel distinctions made in various spiritual traditions. For instance, in Buddhism, there's often a distinction made between practices focused on cultivating special states or powers, like some forms of Tantra, and those emphasizing direct insight into the nature of the mind and reality, like Zen or Vipassana. Okay? Similarly, in Hindu traditions, there's a recognition that siddhis, or spiritual powers, can be a distraction from true spiritual growth. The Yoga Sutras warn that these powers can be obstacles on the path to liberation. The goal is liberation, y'all. That's my goal. And I just put it out there. If you ever start just really keeping up with what I put out with my Vibrant Works, exploring the vibrant minds, the point of all of this is to give you as much information you need, as many perspectives as you need to liberate yourself. Okay? So there's no confusion. My purpose is to give you insight of the vibrant mind in order for you to use that to liberate yourself in a responsible, accountable way that builds up communities, builds up people, build up your family, and not make you feel superior to doing that or them. Okay? This doesn't mean that all energetic practices are problematic or that mindfulness is always superior. Rather, it suggests that different practices might require different levels of vigilance against spiritual narcissism. It also reminds us that the way we approach and interpret our practice may be just as important as the practice itself. Your perspective of your practice and your intent behind it may be just as important as the practice itself. You're using this practice to move energy in your body, move thoughts in your mind, do all these things and these tricks to make you feel magical. Once you feel magical, it's about you in that moment. Block out everything else, everybody else. You don't have to start the comparison game when you get to that point of harmony and peace in yourself, or knowledge, or an enlightenment. Once you get there, y'all, stay there. It's for you. Or you're just doing it so, hey, look at me. I have these gifts. I have all these abilities. I have all this knowledge. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Okay? All right. So, while science shows differences between practices like mindfulness and energy healing, spiritual traditions also recognize this. For instance, Zen Buddhism emphasizes direct experience and ego transcendence, while some New Age practices focus more on special abilities or knowledge. So, that leads us into the practical solutions for authentic growth. Practical solutions for your authentic growth. Now, you've heard a lot now. I need you to watch this over and over again so you can get it. Don't fall into the trap of the ego, giving your ego all this information, all this knowledge, y'all. And now you pump it up your head and your ego take over your train, take over your practice. Feed me more. Feed me more. I need to feel better than everybody else. Or I don't feel as good as everybody else. Help me. Feed me more. It's about you. Nobody else. There's nobody else that you have to focus on. Mama, daddy, sister, brother, auntie, boyfriend, baby mama, sister, daddy, brother, cousin. None of that. You. Focus on you. Because once you... So. Alright. So it said Alright. Had a momentary disconnect there, but it looks like I'm good to go now. Let me wrap this up. So how can we pursue spiritual growth without falling into the trap of ego inflation? How? You may ask. Let's explore some practical solutions that blend scientific insights with the spiritual wisdom. Number 1, intention setting. I told you about the word intention. It's all about your intentions. Before each practice, take a moment to set a clear intention. What direction am I trying to move in with this practice? Science shows that this can influence outcomes, and it's a common spiritual practice too. The whole point is to influence an outcome. So be intentional behind it. Don't just throw it up, oh, take me with the wind. Have some sense of intention behind it and awareness behind what you're doing. Regular self-reflection. Always be analyzing what you're doing in order to make sure the data, your awareness, your results, your outcomes are reflecting to you that your intent is matching with the outcome. So implement a daily journaling practice, for instance. Research supports its benefit for self-awareness, and it's a tool used in many spiritual traditions. Write your thoughts out. Write your results out, y'all. Keep track of it. Just like you do other things. Your paycheck, they keep track of that. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what you're supposed to get paid. Do the same thing with every other part of your life. Okay? Community practice. You can join a Sagna or a spiritual community because studies show social support enhances personal growth, and it's a cornerstone of many spiritual paths. Have spiritual like-minded people holding you accountable to make sure that your spiritual practices are in alignment with the spiritual practice for the benefit of you and not for the benefit of inflating the ego. Okay? Be mindful when you're using social media. Be aware of how you present your spiritual journey online, because research shows social media itself can inflate the ego. Everybody on social media, reverse that. Not going to put that energy out there because I actually don't mean it that way. A lot of individuals on social media get caught up in the ego inflation trap. Have very valuable information, but in order for that information to stand out, they have to talk about somebody else and put some other group or person down, some other individual down to boost up their stuff. And with Vibing Works, we don't have to do that. We're inclusive. No matter what you believe, how you believe, all we doing is sharing these ideas so that they can vibrantly work together in a harmonious way. Okay? So, embrace humility. Cultivate an attitude of beginner's mind, y'all. This is a Zen concept which aligns with psychological research on the benefits of humility. Have some humility in your approach. That will keep the ego at bay, y'all. You running the train. The ego ain't running the train. The ego is just here to give you a personality. But it's not, you aren't your personality. You are the observer of your personality. Experiencer of your personality. Okay? Number 6, y'all, service to others. And sometimes you might have to get out there, do the groundwork, get in some volunteer work, engage in some regular volunteer work. Scientific studies and spiritual teachings agree on this profound benefits of selfless service to others. It don't mean you just have to go out and pick up trash necessarily. It could mean, you donate some food here and there. You help clean up a neighbor's house if they're disabled. You help do some yard work here and there. Things like that. Just service to others. So we got to wrap this up, man. But remember that the path of genuine growth isn't about becoming superior or gaining special powers. It's about expanding our awareness and compassion. Science and spirituality alike reminds us that true growth often comes with increased humility and interconnectedness, not separation. Coming together, not separating. Even if you're in a place of solitude, that doesn't mean you're disconnected. You can still be interconnected in a place of solitude, y'all. Okay? The next time you engage in your spiritual practice, try implementing some of the practical tips we've discussed. Stay aware, stay humble, and most importantly, stay curious. Thank you for joining me today, man. I always appreciate when y'all give me y'all time and give yourself a chance to just learn something new each and every time that I put information out there. So, until next time, y'all, fellow explorers of the vibrant mind, may your growth be genuine and your path be illuminated. Be the light, y'all, for the purpose of you. You want to feel good because you want to feel good. You don't have to want to feel good because you want to feel better than somebody else that don't feel good. That's not what we own. We own about self-enlightenment and connecting with others that are the same to build up that vibrancy within our households, our communities, and ultimately our society and our world. Okay? So thank y'all for today. And again, my name is Justin. If you haven't watched some of my old stuff, go back and watch it. Subscribe. Add your comments. I would love to hear what y'all think about the information that was given today. Did something resonate with you? Did something that you hear make you think a little more? Make you want to take an action in a direction? So interact with me, y'all. I love interacting. And I'm going to wrap this up. Have a blessed day. Vibrant Works, y'all.